Hello, everybody. This is Neil with Portal to Ascension. Good to be here with you all. Hope you're all doing beautifully. Back for another broadcast here. And today I'm excited because we have someone that I was only introduced to. He's been doing his work for a while, but I was only introduced to his work recently. And we're going to be collaborating together this year with him being one of our presenters on the Galactic Origins cruise. So we're going to have an opportunity to dive deep with Jerry Sargeant and Star Magic Healing. And I'm excited for this for multiple reasons. Not only do I get excited when we get to work with someone else and bring someone else's beautiful angle that they're coming in order to contribute to the shift in consciousness, but we're going to be going on a 7-day cruise together, guys, with 23 other presenters and musicians on December 14th to 21st of this year. And that's galacticorigins.cruise.com. So you can tune into that. So I'm going to get a lot of time to spend with Jerry and other presenters there, diving deep. And I'm also excited because I've only communicated with Jerry through email. So you guys are going to see the raw interaction here today, where we're basically going to be getting to know each other live here. And I love when that kind of situation happens. So this is an interview in its truest form, where we're going to be going into Jerry's life and seeing, what led him to the work that he's doing now, and what kind of work he's doing. Because I've been researching some of Jerry's work over the last couple of weeks and looking at some of the testimonials. And there are some amazing testimonials and experiences that people are receiving, and all types of miraculous, let's say, healing work is occurring. And I'm very interested in this because obviously this is the way we're going to a world where we can create harmony and utilize frequencies in order to heal all diseases and ailments. And that seems to be a huge part of Jerry's work. So we're just going to get into it today, guys. I'm going to go ahead and read Jerry's bio, and we'll go ahead and bring him on. So Jerry Sargeant, known as the Facilitator, is world regarded for his healing abilities. Likened to some of the most influential healers in history, Jerry accesses deep into people's energetic and holographic blueprint to help facilitate healing. He can achieve results on physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual planes. Using his frequency, Jerry can balance and facilitate the body's own healing mechanisms. His book, Healing with Light Frequencies, teaches how to harness light frequencies to energize, uplift, and empower your life and the lives of others. In August of this year, he will be publishing, I think that's, hopefully that's this year, not old bio, Activate Your Superhuman Potential, the only workbook to explore how to prepare the mind, body, and spirit for 5D. So everybody join me in welcoming Jerry Sargeant. Hey, Jerry, good to see you, brother. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Neil. It's good to be here, man.
Yeah, it's good to connect with you. So I'd love just to get right into it. I would love to know your journey. And something that I always like to ask people is like, was there a milestone that maybe you were part of some system or some belief system or religion, and then there was an awakening from that? And with your tools and what you're doing, was there kind of an awareness of your gifts as a child? And when did you finally get into the ownership of what is actually occurring and the types of gifts that you have?
Yeah, it's a big load of questions in one, so that's cool. Yeah, so as a child, I wasn't into anything religious. My parents weren't religious. I went to church twice. Once, like with my parents for something, I don't know, some kind of Sunday morning thing. And then once when I was a teenager to give a presentation with the school thing. The only times I went to church, didn't believe in God, universe, the spirit, any of that stuff. It was kind of just completely kind of alien and foreign to me. Gifts as a child were kind of like non-existent. Just all of this stuff was just like, for me, it was just way over the other side of the planet. As a child, I was an angry kid. I was fostered, adopted. I got beaten by my first adoptive parents, abused by my first foster parents. And so I kind of like had this kind of introduction to life. I played a lot of rugby as a kid in England, and I got banned when I was 14, turned to drink, turned to drugs. The rave scene was rife, so I was kind of just all over the country, popping ecstasy tablets, blowing whistles, and just dancing the night away and having a great time. And then in my sort of later teens, I ended up moving to Tenerife in the Canary Islands, where I worked for a high-profile criminal organization. And I was there for a number of years, loved it. had no inclination to want to change it because I was young, I had loads of money, everything was great, buy all these material things. And I thought that was my life kind of set, you know. I ended up falling in love and meeting a lady on mainland Spain. We moved back to Tenerife, and our daughter was born, Alea. And there was a lot of kind of gang warfare in Tenerife at the time, and so things were pretty rough. And so my ex-wife Laura, she was from Romania, and when she left, she never had a passport. So it meant we couldn't fly, we couldn't travel, we couldn't get out of this dangerous situation. So I ended up smuggling Laura and Alea back to England, got married, set up a property business. That went amazing. Then that fell apart a year or so later. And that happening was probably one of the best things that happened in my life, because everything collapsed. And I went from having so much to having literally nothing and being in debt to the banks and all this sort of stuff. And so what happened is I ended up going back to selling drugs. But what happened is we moved into this house. And when we moved into this house, Laura came downstairs one night. She was having these crazy experiences. Like, she was seeing all these dark images and hearing all these dark voices. And something was trying to make her push the pushchair into the cars in the road when she was walking down the road in the morning to take the kids to school. And our son, Josh, was kind of born by then as well. And, you know, she said to me, like, she was telling me this, and I was like looking at it thinking, this is nuts, you know, but obviously, you know, I love you. What do you want to do about it? So she phoned her friend, who was a priest, and this priest came around the house, and she's dousing the house and all this stuff, like putting crosses up. And I'm sat there thinking, this is like something out of the podcast. This is nuts. And then anyway, she calms Laura down. Laura goes to bed. And the next day I went to see my mate. I said, listen, like, this weird thing happened last night. I said, what do you make of it? He goes, you've got to speak to this lady. So he gave me the name and the telephone number of this lady that lived the other side of England. And I called her up, but she never answered. And then she called me back a little while later, and she said, what's going on? I said, well, this happened last night. And I told her the story. She said, where do you live? And I said, 316 Richmond Road. And she said, hold on a minute. And then she goes, have you been knocking some walls down in the house? And I said, well, we just moved in. It's a rented accommodation. But the previous owners clearly built an extension. She goes, yeah, you got an angry old man in your house. So I'm thinking, an angry old man, this just sounds like bonkers, you know. But I said, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? She goes, I'm going to get rid of him for you. So I said, brilliant. When can you come round? She goes, I don't need to do that. I can do it from here. So I'm thinking, this is just getting weirder and weirder. So anyway, I put the phone down. I go home and I speak to Laura. And I said, you know, I know I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I spoke to this lady about what happened last night. And she reckons there's an angry old man in the house. And my missus turns around to me and goes, yeah, I know, Jerry, I've seen it. So I thought, okay, you're telling me you've seen this angry old man. This lady's telling me there's one there. I said, you've never spoken to each other. You've got no common friends. There must be an element of truth to this. So anyway, I phoned this lady back up and I said, I don't know what you do, but I've got to come and see you. It turned out she worked for Scotland Yard in the psychic division. Wow. She owned a progression business. So she became my spiritual teacher. Now, around the same time as this happening, I was in a car crash in Romania. So again, I'm with Laura and the two children. We're traveling to Bucharest Airport early in the morning. I'm asleep in the passenger seat and I hear a loud crash. And I wake up and the taxi's going from side to side. And I think to myself, boy, we're in a bad accident. We're either going to hit the oncoming traffic or the car's going to flip over. And then all of a sudden we stop and there's no other cars on the road. And I look at the taxi driver. He looks petrified. Alea, our daughter's underneath the driver's seat. Josh is in Laura's arms. Both their mouths are full of glass. And there's a hole in the windscreen and there's blood dripping down my face, but I wasn't bleeding. So I thought, that's weird. So I get out of the taxi. I look about 30 meters up the road and there's these two ladies. I look another 100 meters or so up the road and there's what looks like a dead body. And what happened is these three ladies were crossing the road. The first one got hit. She came through the windscreen, smashed me in the face whilst I was asleep, got sucked out of the car and died. Second one had both her ankles cut clean off. And the third one was physically okay. So I checked on the missus and kids, and A guy had come out from a nearby factory. I thought, well, what can I do, man? I mean, her ankles are on the floor. I was kind of like just fixated on what looked like a dead body. Something was drawing me there. So I get closer and closer, and I see this energy hovering above the body. And I'm shaking my head, like walking towards it, like I wanted to see it. I didn't want to see it. Like I was wondering what it was. Like I now know it was the lady's son. So I walked towards the lady. The energy fizzles off into the ether, and by that time I'm looking down over her body, and her legs are wrapped up over her head. She's completely mangled, and I remember like looking up and just saying thank you. And I wanted a whiskey and a cigarette, and I don't drink whiskey and I don't smoke cigarettes, but like it felt like a kind of a time to celebrate. It was weird, and it was like someone was smacking me around the face and saying, "Jerry, wake up! You were so much more than these physical bodies. Like, get a grip on your life. You're throwing it away, And so I had this experience, and then this literally, it took me on a different path. But I was still doing all the drug smuggling, bank fraud, like lots of different things, because I was kind of addicted to it and the money and that sort of thing. So, but I had my spiritual teacher. A few months later, Laura had a headache, and I thought to myself, I can take that out of your head. I don't know why I thought that. I just went over there. I looked in her head and I could see this green energy. So I grabbed it and pulled it out. And she got up off the bed like she didn't have a headache. And I thought, that's a bit weird. But I just sort of carried on going. Around this sort of time as well, I went to a talk on the end of the Mayan calendar in 2012 with a couple of my mates. And we're in
Question, why did you go to that talk? Because you said you were in this world, all of a sudden you started seeing these apparitions. So what was happening in your life that led you to even going to that talk?
Because I'd met this lady. I'd had like several past life regressions. I'd had the accident. I'd seen the soul. I took the lady, the headache out of my missus's head. And so I was being opened up, and me and my friends were just researching spirituality. And we kept seeing 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar. So we thought, let's go and see what this is all about, So we end up jumping in the car, me and my two friends. We go to Basingstoke, not far from London. And we're in this like old dated bungalow. And the guy's giving a talk. And I look at him and I ask him a question. And it was a little bit contradictory. And I wasn't being rude, but I was genuinely curious. And he looked into my eyes, and his human face disappeared. And there was a green lizard there. I'm thinking, what the heck is this? Like on the outside, I'm trying to look cool as a cucumber. But on the inside, I'm kind of like just kind of not freaked out, but like I'd never seen anything like it. And I did not expect anything like to ever see anything like that. So I had this experience, and like he held my stare for like 3, 4, 5 seconds. And then it kind of it came back again, and we carried on. And then that night I ended up meeting my first spirit guide. He came to look after me because this guy was trying to psychically attack us. So there was a lot of things that kind of, these different experiences that were happening. And we got a map from the Matrix Institute in America, which had all of these future maps of the world. And they were saying in 2012, Europe's going to be underwater, New Zealand's going to quadruple in size. So we ended up moving to New Zealand because we bought into all this and we thought it was really going to happen. So we ended up going to New Zealand, but actually going to New Zealand now, I realized this was just a little piece to get me to go to New Zealand. Because when I got to New Zealand, I met this old guy who taught me how to meditate. And he had a pyramid in his garden. I used to go around his house every day. He introduced me to Saint Germain. We used to communicate with him all the time. And then I had some amazing experiences in this pyramid. Like one day I'm sat there and Jesus comes in front of me and my feet turn to balls of fire. And he says, Jerry, you can walk anywhere you want to go. Just don't be frightened. So I said, okay. And then he turns and he walks up these steps that appear in the garden. So I followed him up the steps, and we're in the Last Supper. And he's talking, there's fruit, there's food. I was in the body of Matthew. I look out the window, and there's this massive spaceship. And they were showing me that spaceships have been around for a very long time, like extraterrestrials and stuff. So anyway, I'm there for a little while. Then I get up, I walk back down the steps, and I go back into my body. And then a couple of weeks later, I'm meditating again. And this guy taught me to meditate with my eyes open. So I'm meditating with my eyes open. I look to the right-hand side, and there's a little space pod in the garden. So I brought my light out of my body. I went and got in the space pod, and there's a blue being in there. And he flew me through a portal for 4 or 5 seconds. We come out the other side. We're by water, a beach. I get out the space pod. I walk up the beach, and there's 200 or so of these blue beings. And I knew I was on Alpha Centauri. I knew they were Lyrans, but I'd never heard of Alpha Centauri or Lyrans. This information was just coming. When I walked up the beach, they hugged me. And like, I felt so much love, like a level of love that is just beyond anything that I've ever experienced. And they hugged me for a little while, and it felt like I was home, like with my family, you know. And then they kind of parted this like sort of walkway out of these kind of Lyran bodies, and I walked up and followed one of them into the jungle at the back of the beach. Go through the woods, through the jungle, and then there's like a pyramid, a huge pyramid made of light. They took me inside, and when we got inside the pyramid, there's this old ancient Lyran. Like, his skin and that looked young, but you could just tell he was so wise and old. And it was like meeting like a chief from a Native American Indian tribe, but in this kind of galactic sort of like, you know, circumstance. And they got me to kneel down on the floor, and all this orange light started pouring into my crown full of geometrical code. But it was nothing like any of the geometry that you see here. It was like this spiralized geometry that was always moving and fluid. So I had this download, and I don't know how long it lasted for, but afterwards, 2 of them kind of picked me up underneath my arms and frog marched me back to the space pod, stuck me inside. We flew back through the tunnel, back into the garden, and I went back into my body. And then nothing happened for a couple of years. And then one day I wake up and I just know that we've got to move back to England. And Laura and the kids were like, no way we're moving back. You know, we've got to New Zealand. We love school. The business is going amazing. We'd set up like a mixed martial arts gym. And so everything was really cool. But anyway, I knew that we had to go back. So I'm pestering them every day. In the end, we put a manager in charge of the gym, pack up, and we go back to England. And this is when kind of everything kind of went into overdrive for me. So I'm out running one Sunday morning, and I see these fairies around a tree. And I stop, and I'm looking at them, and then an angel comes down. He goes, my name's Archangel Gabriel. You've got to write a book. And I said, okay. I said, what's it called? He goes, it's called Into the Light. It's about your life. So I ran home and I wrote this book in 4 weeks, published it. Wow. And then I started seeing all the code that I got in the orange download. So I was saying to my guides, and that, what am I supposed to do with this stuff? And they just said, Jerry, you're lazy. You're not meditating enough. You're not doing the work. So I started getting up every day with my son at 5 a.m. And we're going into meditation. And we ended up in these mystery schools underneath the pyramids. And we were sat in classrooms, and I was looking around, and there was loads of other human beings in there too. And we were sat at these like little desks, and a man came out with these scrolls. And on the scrolls, it was the same codes that I was seeing in the space, the same codes in the orange download. And he didn't tell us his name at first, but I later found out that it was Thoth. So he's getting scrolls out, and he's teaching us for 9 months. We went every day for 2 hours. And at the end of it, people just started coming into my life that needed healing. And I was trying it, and it was working. Then I went to a Mind, Body, Spirit festival in Cheltenham, and I offered some free healings out. I put like an Excel spreadsheet and said, listen, put your name down, and I'm gonna draw 3 names out of the hat at the end of the weekend. And about 70 or 80 people put their name down. I phoned them all up and told them they'd won so I could practice. So I had all these people to practice on. Over the next couple of weeks, you know, I went through them all. And then, you know, things.
And what year was this? When was this?
This was like 2015, because it was 2016 that we started Star Magic. Yeah. So something else had happened that was a bit of a spanner in the works. So when we moved back from New Zealand, I went to renew my passports at the passport office, me and the kids. And I got arrested for conspiracy to defraud the Bank of Scotland and holding a false travel document from 2007. So I went through this kind of like really interesting experience, because I went to see a friend of mine, and he used to be a lawyer, but he knew the corruption in the system. So he said, so I told him like the spot that I was in. He said, listen, I can get you off the fraud for the bank stuff, but I can't get you off the travel document charges. So he explained to me how bank mortgages work and all this sort of stuff. And he got me a document which had like 63 million properties in it from 2007, which was worth billions from the Royal Bank of Scotland. And the properties that we'd done our fraud on were inside of it. So anyway, he gave me this document, and it had been sold to a company, a property company called the Aaron Property Group, and then traded on the New York Stock Exchange. So he showed me that the Royal Bank of Scotland have been paid over and over, and you don't actually owe any money on this. Anyway, the next morning, it disappears out of my emails. That morning, I go to the gym. On my way home from the gym, I get pulled over by undercover police in an unmarked Silver X5. They've dragged me out of the car at gunpoint, apparently for a bold tire. They went to my mum and my adoptive mum and dad's house that day. My dad had cancer. They were really rude to them. They were just like trying to like put the pressure on me because I had this document. But I went down to the Metropolitan Police, walked in, and I plonked it on the desk, and they just dropped the charges straight away. And so I had this kind of travel document charge. Now, when it happened in 2007, it was a 2-year prison sentence, but they changed it to 10 years. And the police lady was horrible, and she was trying to get me on the 10 years. So I didn't know what was going to happen when I went there. But I said to the universe, you know, when I went to court, I said, listen, if you get me off this court case, I promise you I'm going to stop all the other stuff I'm doing and dive into star. Well, I didn't know it was going to be called star magic. Dive into the healing.
Yeah.
So I went to court, and I'm stood in a bulletproof dock, and the judge walks out. He's a man with 2 accomplices, and they were both females. And the lady to my left, to his right, she looked at me and winked, and she had wings on her back. I could see wings. I was like, no, this is crazy. So like my mind was like, nah, you're never going to get off this. And the prosecution gave their side of the story. My solicitor gave our side. They went out and deliberated 40 minutes, came back in, asked me to stand up. I could see her wings again. She winked again. And they just said, listen, Mr. Sargeant, we can see you're a changed man. We're going to give you a 1-year conditional discharge and an £80 court fee. And I was like, that's it. I know what I've got to do now. You know, I'd commit. So
Wow.
I walked out of the courtroom, and the next March, we started Star Magic. Yeah.
Wow, brother. Wow. As you were speaking, I was writing questions, then you answered it right after I wrote the question. Amazing. You know, as your gifts were coming online, was information coming to you as well? Like, were you starting to understand interactions with beings, who the beings were, why you're getting these gifts? Did any of that kind of information come to you?
Yeah, I mean, whilst I was going and seeing this lady who was taking me into all these past lives, I had so many experiences. So I was going 2 or 3 times a week for a few years. So I went into hundreds of past lives. She taught me how to remote view,
Wow.
how to bring my light out of my body and travel, how to communicate telepathically. You had to fully bring my soul out and jump through different dimensional spaces. So like I had this kind of like fast track. So all through that time, I was meeting beings in the invisible space. And yeah, and then once I'd met the Lyrans in 2009, for me, they've never left. They've been with me all the time, in their Lyran form, in their feline form. I mean, I do communicate with some other beings too, Arcturians, Syrians, different ones, but the Lyrans just seem to be there all the time. And there's always downloads. I might go through periods where there's like adjustment and recalibration and integration. And I've always been an impatient person. So I'm like, when's the next download, man? What's the next piece of information? But you know, they just feed it to me as and when I need it, and what, you know, the missions that I've got to go on, you know. But yeah, I mean, they came to me literally just after I started Star Magic. I was meditating on a hilltop, looking out over the town, and the town just disappeared. And I see all these orange dots around the Christ consciousness grid of the planet, and they were showing me that I needed to build healing centers. So I said to Derek, who I turned up, that's his name, one of the Blue Lions, the one that took me in the space pod. So I said to him, what are these orange lights? He said, the healing centers, you've got to build them. So I said, well, if I build them, who's going to work in them? I can't do it on my own. He said, well, you better start training people. So again, I like ran home, a bit like the into like Archangel Gabriel experience. I ran home, I wrote a book called Healing with Light Frequencies, the Transformative Power of Star Magic, published it, went and gave a talk on Star Magic, and there was a publisher in the audience that kind of said, oh, I want to publish that book. It just all fell into place. And then the following February, we did our first training. I wrote a training program. And since then, we've trained thousands of people in 60 plus countries all over the world, from China to America, everywhere in between. And we're in the process of getting our first healing center in Transylvania up and running.
Wow. Okay, so I want to go into that in a minute, but I just want to talk more about the Lyrans for a second. There's been many stories and channelers that have said that the Lyrans were the first human template, of humanity, basically the first template, and then after that there was a seeding throughout the galaxy. So I'm curious, from your experiences, who were these beings, this tribe that connected with you, and what is their role for humanity right now?
Yeah, so the tribe that I originally came from was called the Karanu tribe. And I remember being there on Avion. And I remember what Avion was like. I remember the temple structures. I can remember the agriculture. I can remember the kind of gatherings that we used to have. There were multiple tribes too. And what I always remember is there just being a lot of harmony. Everybody worked together, and these beings could, they were like humanoid felines. So they had like arms and legs and stuff, but their heads and faces were more like lions and lionesses, but very different blends of lions and lionesses, like some really powerful lions, some that were more human with very slight sort of feline features. The men had like a lot more hair, the women had a lot less hair. And yeah, we were about 7 to 9 foot tall, pretty big, and everybody was really healthy. Everybody was really happy. And I even remember going through the wars on that planet. I mean, they had the original Garden of Eden on Avion, so I remember a lot of the reproduction and how things were done, how things were actually created. And I remember when the wars started and the Dracos came through, and they had these kind of like lasers that they'd shoot a being, and literally it would melt and disappear, like some kind of like very advanced kind of weaponry. And I remember there was a lot of sacrifice, a lot of murder, like literally just a takeover. And I remember that we ended up escaping in spacecrafts and flew out into the galaxy, completely battered and drained, and quite a lot of fear too,
Right.
Even up until that point, we'd always lived with no fear. It was just love and harmony, but this just created a lot of trauma. And we partnered up with other beings from other planets and stuff, and then kind of regrouped, and over hundreds of thousands of years kind of regrouped and created our own armies, and then went to war with them a bit later on. But that's like a whole other story. Right now on planet Earth, I mean, like, we as a species are going through a massive ascension process, as you know, and the work that we do with Star Magic is all about using frequency, light, vibration to help recode people's mathematical architecture so they can come more online and be those more advanced superhuman aspects of themselves, to activate those DNA strands. And so going through those mystery schools, being introduced to the Karanu tribe a little bit later on, going back and seeing how they used to run their crystal grids and how they used to phase out of one reality and phase into another reality. All these different technologies, things that they've shared with me and helped me remember that I used to be able to do them. And so what we're doing now is using these skill sets, using these technologies and sharing them with people on Earth. I mean, we run a number of different trainings, and the idea is that we empower people. We want to empower people to step into their superhuman potential, to realize that they can play the game of life better by their own rules, and they don't have to be slaves to the system. They can live from heart-based consciousness. Fear is a choice. Danger is real, but fear is a choice, and they can choose love or fear. They're both on the same emotional spectrum. So we're encouraging people to go within, step into their power, and start creating beautiful realities for themselves, and really be high frequency beings, living from a space of no judgment, pure acceptance, and just trying to enjoy life on this human planet, because it is an amazing planet, but so many people are lost. And so through our trainings, we're helping them find their way back home, back to love, back to their heart, back to acceptance, back to unity consciousness, and just be empowered.
Beautiful. Now, I'd love to know your perspective on, because with this healing work, you said helping people emotionally, physically, and so I'm assuming a lot of trauma that we've experienced, emotional trauma in this life, childhood trauma. I know I went on this journey in order to try to heal from childhood trauma, not to mention all the stuff that happened in our past lives. So how does it work for someone that's receiving these light frequencies? and going through trauma, do we need to be aware of this trauma? Um, and are we able to, instead of pushing the darkness away, because we tend to do that a lot, is really embracing it, integrating the darkness and seeing it as a lesson? Those are things that we kind of conceptualize and we go through experiences to receive, right? So how with this work, with these light frequencies, what kind of testimonies, what kind of experiences are people having, and how are they able to really heal from trauma? Because really it's a consciousness shift, it's a mental shift as well, your belief systems, the way you think about yourself. So what kind of experiences are people having?
Yeah. I mean, like, first off, I think what's really important for people to understand is that, like, I call myself a facilitator. And
Yeah,
on the website it says Jerry is a healer as well, but I've never healed a single person in my whole life. What I've done is create an environment so they can self-heal. The physical body is an absolutely amazing avatar machine device. It's a biological computer. And when you know how to program and reprogram this biological computer, you can create magic and miracles. And they're not really magic and miracles. They're simple everyday occurrences when you understand how energy works, frequency works, and what this body is actually designed to do. So we're literally like computer programmers. We will go into the back end of someone's biological computer, rewrite the programming. Like, if you got a website that's yellow and you want to make it blue, you just go and change the code in the back end, and it changes from yellow to blue on the front end. If someone has something wrong with their liver, we go and change the code. We find the past life, we find the parallel reality, the future life, the galactic incarnation where that trauma point occurred, and we change it. And when we change it, the liver clears up. So, I mean, if you go to our website, you're going to see people that have had they take their hearing aids out, their eyesight comes back. We've got people that haven't walked for 10 years that get up and walk, on the second day of a group healing. When we were doing our American tour last year, I mean, we had a lady with multiple sclerosis. Doctor said, that's it, you're in a wheelchair for life. Day number 2, she gets up and walks 40 meters to the toilet. We were in Canada last year on the America-Canada tour. Lady, 72 years old, injects herself every day for diabetes, not walked for like 12 years, maybe more. And the second day she gets up, no, the first day in the afternoon, she got up and walked. The second day, when she came to the second day of the group healing, she walked from the car park into the building, up in the lift and into our space. And, she's never been in a wheelchair since. People with trigeminal neuralgia, tumors, brain tumors, you name it. People that have been told they're going to die in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, they're still alive 4 or 5 years later. And it's because we're changing the frequency on a deep level. It goes beyond childhood trauma. Like, childhood trauma is the tip of the iceberg. And it's always a great starting point, which takes you on whichever timeline you need to drill into to get to the deepest root trigger in space-time, which is the deepest, the earliest, most traumatic past life, future life, which is really parallel once you get into the field. Once you go in and you alchemize that, everything kind of falls into place. When it comes to like dark and light and the shadow side, a lot of people run from it. But if you run from it, you're only ever going to be half full, because we are dark and light. It doesn't matter like whether you want to admit that or accept that or not. Until you fully embrace all aspects of you, then you're never going to fully step into your power. So you've got to get all of that shadow, all of that light, and you've got to just bring it into wholeness. And when you're in wholeness, that's where the magic happens. Now, at the same time, there are darker aspects of reality that we have to be mindful of, that we don't really want to bring into our space, because there are interdimensional entities that kind of manipulate human consciousness. We call them shadow parasites, and they will come into a human body, but they're not part of that human. There's shadow parts that we have that are part of our consciousness that exist through time and space, not just from this reality field. But there are some interdimensional entities that are really not nice at all, that you don't want to bring in. And they do worm their way in contractually into some human beings' bodies, in some human beings' energy fields, or they might work remotely with projection technology to infiltrate a human and keep them in a low vibrational state. So we work with all of that stuff too, sort of like satanic ritual abuse programming, military programming, different levels of the work.
Wow. So a lot of times when, or maybe every time when somebody has some sort of illness, a cancer, or trauma, there's something that maybe they were not addressing. As you shared, it goes beyond this life. It's like in the quantum field, and so you could say that it's a lesson that they weren't that kept coming up, and they weren't listening to it, and then ultimately it ended up in a tumor. And are you saying instead of having to know exactly what that lesson is, that you can go into the quantum field through this technique and rewrite the code so that it's just gone in the first place?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, like just to add on to what you said, the body is as well as it being a biological computer, it's a communication device. So if you look at the liver, you're looking at anger, you're looking at guilt. If you look at the neck, you're looking at stubbornness, rigidity. If you look at the left eye, you're looking at the grandmother ancestral line. The right eye is the grandfather ancestral line. The brain is the control center to do with wanting to be in control of life. Like all body parts mean something. Okay, the hips are about direction, for example. So when you know how to read the body, you've got a good starting point. So we will go in, read the body, and understand like the kind of communication that the body's trying to give us. And we will go in and rewrite that programming. Now, give you an example. I had a guy, and he was bedridden for a long time. And he had like a real bad adrenal fatigue. He was a multimillionaire. Ended up realizing that he was homosexual, split up with his girlfriend, went on this kind of path. He told everybody rejected him. He met this man who kind of like he fell in love with, and the old man abused him and just chucked him in the dirt. So he had this kind of rough ride, right? And when he had this rough ride, he just couldn't focus on his business. So he lost his business. He lost everything. He ended up being in bed for 6 months. He was crawling to the toilet, like just completely smashed. But what it was a lot of guilt. It was guilt trauma. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I went in to do the healing session on him. Went through a couple of different realities, past lives, brought them into healing, and then found this one reality where the guy is walking down the road. He's with his girlfriend. And a car comes past, and the girl steps out into the road, gets run over by the car in this other reality. So I then see him. He's got the woman in his arms. She's dead. She's bleeding. You know what I mean? Like, and he's angry. He's sad. He blames himself, right? So what I did is I rewound the timeline. I went back to before the car came down the road. And as the car was coming down the road, I tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Hey, there's a car coming. Just watch out." So he put his arm around his missus, pulled her in. Wow. The car went back. Now we've got a different reality stream. So what I did is I got that reality stream. I turn it into a piece of code. I download it into the guy's pineal gland, into his biological computer. It hits the pineal. The master cell in the pineal runs the frequency through every cell. All of the old programming disappears, and a new download of light comes in. And as that new download of light comes in, everything heals. That guy got up out of bed the next day. So, we've had so many experiences like this. There's many different ways that you can run the frequency. Like this, this is like changing a timeline. And so we're rewriting the computer programming inside of someone's body and brain. Some people don't agree with this. They think this is karma. You shouldn't be messing around with karma like this. But right now, I've got a guy in hospital. Not in hospital, but in bed. He's been in bed for 6 months. What? I'm just going to leave him because he's got karma to do? No, I'm just going to go in and do my work and then let him move on. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I get that. And ultimately, like we're in the karma that we're in is a construct of this matrix. There's I think there might be even galactic karma. There's solar systematic karma, which is the precession of the equinoxes and Earth. There might be galactic karma. There might be beyond that. And so if we're in this matrix and what our goal is to free ourselves from the matrix, would you say that we're going to be freeing ourselves from karma?
Listen, for me, karma is about cause and effect, right? We're putting an energy out, the energy's coming back to us. This matrix that we're in is a control mechanism. We're in a controlled environment, not just in our galaxy, not just in our universe, but through multiple universes in this whole time-based matrix.
Was it created for us? Did we create it, or was it created and imposed on us?
So if you go all the way back, like way back, billions of years, and you see how consciousness unfolded, and beings dropping through different densities as the universe has unfolded, more planets are created, more star systems. What happened? Consciousness was falling, and some of the creator beings that were creating these new universes, they went back to God's source, infinite intelligence, and said, listen, consciousness is falling too fast over here. We need to put some measures in place to stop it falling. So they created this construct, and they created it out of Metatron's cube. And so Metatron's cube, this cube geometry,
right,
people see it as bad and devious and dark and all of this sort of stuff. But actually, originally, it was put in place as a fail-safe mechanism to stop the game descending any further. But what happened is we ended up getting kind of stuck in it. Now, we can actually exit this very easily by just changing our internal mathematics and realizing that we can shift our body's frequency and our own DNA template. We can start moving through the stargates and get out of this matrix in a heartbeat, and that's what we're working towards. The other thing we can do if we want to is bring our soul, our light body, out of our body and literally just exit. And that's something that we show people how to do. It's something that I was taught by my first teacher, how to bring my light out of my body and travel. So like, I've been outside of this matrix. I've brought my light out of my body, and I've been up into the God worlds just by simply deciding to go there. A couple of years ago, I hired the Great Pyramid for myself in Giza for several hours, and went in the dark because I've been shown how to reprogram the human body to turn it to a very specific frequency so that we could go through this kind of Stargate system through the Giza Pyramid. So I went in one night. It wasn't last year, it was the year before. And I'd been shown how to switch my multi-dimensional Merkaba field on. And the multi-dimensional Merkaba field is multiple tetrahedrons. It's a 12-pointed star. And once the 12 points start, when the tetrahedrons spin and the 12 points spin, they create a sphere on the outside, which becomes the number 13. When you plug that number 13 into the Cathara grid tree of life structure in your body, and the Cathara grid tree of life structure in planetary, galactic, and universal environments, when you plug it into your DNA template, when you plug it into your multidimensional chakras or transmission centers, and you go into the King's Chamber and you lie right in the middle, what happens is you connect to the 13 constellations in our zodiac, and Ophiuchus being the 13th. And you also run a secondary star system structure as well. You bring the frequencies in, the walls in the King's Chamber collapse. I was in there and the walls just disappeared. There was all this orange light and all these portals just opened up everywhere. All these beings came in. And I never really get scared, man. And I tell you what, I was lying there thinking, shit. Like, I just breathe, Jerry. They're walking around me, like loads of these beings, a lot of negative ones and a lot of positive ones, all come to see what was going on. They brought my light out of my body. I rose up through the King's Chamber, up through the upper chambers, and I went up through Stargate 4, 5, 8, 9, and 12. So I went through the Palladian Gateway, the Arcturian Gateway, the Orion Gateway, the Andromedan Gateway, and the Arimathea Gateway, and the Cradle of Lyra up into the God worlds through this kind of bend in space-time.
So this is while you're inside the pyramid, right? In the King's Chamber.
Whilst I was in the King's Chamber, yeah. And so they were showing me the actual route that we need to take to get our bodies out. And there's a whole other load of mathematics and numerology that goes in. So I'm up there in the God worlds, and I've been there before, just with my soul, and they were just showing me this route that we're going to be able to take our physical body once we re-engineer our mathematics. So I was up there, they brought me back down into my body, and when they brought me back down into my body, I was literally 180 degrees the other way, minus 23 degrees, and I just knew that I was off 23 degrees. And so I had this experience, and it showed me that all this information that we've been getting on how to re-engineer and reprogram our mathematics to kind of activate those crystalline codes and get away from that Fibonacci kind of mathematical sequence and back to that crystalline sequence, which connects us back into the 0 point, we become a whole new human, and what I find really fascinating as well is when you start playing around with these crystalline codes and you get away from all the old geometries, our bodies change massively. I mean, we get people that write in that their feet have gone from size 7 to size 9 overnight. Their hands have grown. I've had people where their kind of actual brain has stayed the same, and their skull is like quadrupled in size by doing a meditation or just connecting. I had this one guy from Brazil. This is the first time that I realized that this stuff was really happening. A guy contacted me from Brazil. He was like 21 years old, and he was meditating one evening with our meditations. And the next morning he wakes up and his skull is massive, but his brain was still small. And so when he was walking, his brain was rattling. It was really painful. He said, "Jerry, please help me." I ended up meeting this guy on Skype, and he said, "Please help me shrink my skull." And I turned around to him and I said, "Brother, why don't you try and grow your brain?" I mean, I didn't know how I was going to help him shrink his skull, but I thought if it's grown to that size and we can make his brain big, he might get all these kind of amazing abilities. But he said, "Look at me, I look stupid when I'm walking down the street. Everybody's looking at me and they're making fun of me." He said, "I've got to shrink it back down." So we went through this process. I actually took him underneath the pyramids into these healing chambers where they got these futuristic MRI machines, ran him through it, and his skull just went back to its normal size. But that was when I realized that when you change the mathematical code, our bodies go back to their normal sizes. And we're activating our DNA, and we're finding our way back to source and back to that original template, that original codex. And this is the whole mission, really.
That makes sense, and you've already heard of junk DNA, and they've already come out in the last few years that they're actually going to hopefully soon not name it something else, because mainstream science has realized that junk DNA is not actually junk. So they don't think it's junk anymore. They're seeing that it's being activated, and most of it gets activated through specific sounds and frequencies in the environment. That's like, what they were saying in the scientific papers, that the frequencies were affecting it. So as all of these DNA strands come online, and the work that you're doing and other people are doing, it would probably have an impact on our genetics, right? And maybe taking us back to a more holistic being that we once were. And in this new reality that we're going into, we are getting, people in general are getting taller anyway, but we're turning into another type of hominid.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when we inhabited other planets, even if you go back hundreds of millions of years ago on Earth, when we had like plasma for blood, and we're not supposed to have like red blood. We're supposed to have this kind of plasma in our bodies. We used to have 6 digits on each hand. Our pineal gland was 4 or 5 times bigger. We were much, much bigger. We had 6 digits on each foot. We could teleport, move from one location to another in our Merkaba field. We could communicate telepathically effortlessly. It was normal. We didn't have to use this archaic language, and we are returning to that. And for me, that's just what's really exciting. If you look at a lot of children on the planet they're exhibiting a lot of these abilities already. We get some amazing children come to us, blowing us away, with the stuff that they're doing. And I feel over the next few years, these new kids, these are going to be our teachers. And one of the reasons we're building our healing centers is because we want to create a platform for these new children coming onto the planet where they can be safe, they can express all these multi-dimensional abilities, and they're not going to go and get taken from their parents, put into a home, stuck on drugs, and just literally completely messed up. We want to have a safe environment so they can show us how to, move through these portal systems, how to use these multi-dimensional faculties, how to really switch them on.
That's beautiful. You shared that we have the ability to go through these stargates. You're saying the Lyran, the Pleiadian, the Orion, and then the central stargate. And I think you said as we re-engineer our bodies and our architecture of our body, this happens. So what does that mean? Are you saying that we're going to have the ability to transport and visit other realities while we remain in physicality by going through these stargates?
Absolutely, 100%. So, we've got a process. There's a very specific code that we put into an octahedron in our palms of our hands. When you run that code into someone's hologram, what happens is it triggers a natural chain of events, and these spirals of code start moving through the body. And what happens is the platonic solids, they appear above the person's chest. You put them inside of each other in a specific order with the cube and the octahedron, the 2 outer ones. And what happens in this 3rd dimensional space, our heart is like a cube. And what happens when you switch it to 5D, it becomes like a dodecahedron. Now, when the dodecahedron has 12 sides. Now, When you activate this, there's all this energy starts running up and down the central column. And what happens is 12 streams of light come out from the heart through the walls of the dodecahedron and connect with the multi-dimensional Merkaba field, which has 12 points. It activates it, it creates a sphere, and those 12 points plug into your 12 transmission centers, plus the sphere plugs into the 13th. The transmission centers start plugging into the stargates. The frequency runs from the stargates back into the spinal column, back into your own internal tree of life. So you get this whole mechanism switching on. The energy goes down into the ground, into 12 spheres, which are like this kind of God seed atom, which is housed in the 13th sphere, which is down in Mother Earth's Merkaba field, her heart. When that frequency hits that, it pulls in the 432 hertz frequency, which is the planetary vibrational frequency. It pulls it into Mother Earth's heart, it fires up into your body, and you get this activation and this alchemical creation of the masculine and feminine. The electrical energy runs up, the magnetic energy runs up, and the electrical energy comes down from the stars. And what happens is it creates the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is this mergence of masculine and feminine into wholeness. Now, at this point, there's like a flowering of a lotus flower down in the perineum, and it's a magnetic flowering which supports electrical energy rising up through the body into the brain, which is the Kundalini awakening, the pineal gland switching back on. Once all of this architecture switches on, your 33 vertebrae in your body connect through the 33 portal points in the platonic solids to 33 nodal points around the planet. And these 33 nodal points around the planet pull in off-planet frequency. They fire it into your spinal column, which is like a magic wand, and then your whole body starts to recalibrate. This is what I had to activate to go into the King's Chamber to be able to go through this system. So this is what we teach people, but it's not really about teaching people. It's about helping people remember that they've just forgotten it, and we're just reintroducing to something they've known for eons and eons. Yeah, because we're Stargate Guardians. We've got the keys and the codes in our body to move through this.
Yeah, bro, 100%. You know, I had a regression. I have two regressions over the last couple of years where it was one of those situations where one of them started answering questions from the first one, and both regression therapists didn't know about the other one. So it was just all these validations and confirmations for me. And I saw myself on Orion. And you know the guy in Thor that's at the Stargate with the Rainbow Bridge, right? Yeah. Are you familiar with Thor?
Yeah.
Part? So I was that dude standing at the gate with this like trident kind of thing at the Rainbow Bridge. And when I was in a ceremony a few months later, and I had a vision in the ceremony, and the name of the portal was given to me, the Stargate, and it was called the Portal to Descension. And I was the Stargate keeper for the Portal to Descension from Orion down here. And I realized like a lot of us are the gatekeepers, and you know, and I specifically was a gatekeeper in that reality. And now I'm on Earth creating the reverse of it, the Portal to Ascension. But something that I got out of that was that there's no judgment to the descension or the ascension process. You know, it was something that we chose to experience, come down here and descend. And now the answer to that descension is to go back to that source and go back to that oneness and to create something beautiful on this earth, create something new. You know, and that's definitely what you're doing. And I would love for you, as we're closing out here, I would love for you to explain your vision, because I feel like this world, we're going to be having new infrastructure, new systems, new ways of healing. And from what I'm getting from you is that you're starting to create these centers, kind of like a new Atlantis, you know, like this advanced world with these healing centers. So what do you envision with the work that you're creating, right? And what you're going to do, and then for the whole planet?
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, like I'm just thinking that back to the Stargate thing as well with Thor, because like I just want to kind of can I just touch on that quickly?
Yeah,
because
please.
Like we as humans, it's really important for everyone to know that we carry these keys and codes in our bodies. And here on planet Earth, if there was no humans, the Stargates would not be able to operate. And so, you know, we're in this kind of spiritual war at the same time that's going on in the background always. And the reason that humans are kept alive, because they could just wipe us out if they wanted to, because, you know, we've been through a long period where we've been very, very weak, but they don't but we're remembering how to be strong and fearless again, and we're stepping back into that right now. And we're becoming the Jedi Knights again, the Jedi Knights that are coming down from Sirius and Orion and other star systems. Every 13,000 years, there's a rebirth of the Jedi. Like the film Star Wars and Return of the Jedi. This is real stuff. Like they're just telling us what's really happening. We are the real Jedis that are waking up right now. But we are kept on this planet. They try to keep us dumb so that they keep us alive and we don't remember that we're these Stargate Guardians. But what's happening through the work that you're doing, I'm doing, loads of other beautiful tribes around the planet are doing, we are waking up and we are remembering the truth. And like, you know, you being at that Stargate, you know, at the store with a big hammer, however it was, like that is reality, man. And this is where we're moving back towards. So it just puts a smile on my face when I kind of hear these things, you know, like for what we're doing, like moving into this kind of new phase, this ascension process. We've been told to build 13 centers, and they're all on very sacred grid points around the planet. We've bought land in Portugal, the UK, Romania, different parts, and all of these bits of land, they've come to us in weird circumstances, like they weren't available. Like the one in Madeira, it came through a guy who had a brain tumor in London. I ended up working on him. He was given weeks to live. That was 5 years ago. He's perfectly healthy. And he introduced me to one of the mayors in Madeira. And he had this bit of land for sale, and it's got a portal on it. We ended up buying it. The bit in Romania that we've got has got a portal on it. The ETs come in and out, you know? So all of these bits of land are very sacred. They're very high frequency. And we're building these centers that are built out of the same geometrical code that I got when I was on Alpha Centauri. What happened a few years ago, I ended up through meeting a guy who was an architect. And I looked at his buildings and I was like, this is crazy. You're designing physical structures out of the same technology that we're doing our healing with. So we ended up partnering up, and he's designed this amazing center for us in Romania. We're just getting planning at the moment. Hopefully next year we'll break ground. And so it's going to be beautiful, man. Like the main training room and medicine room is a multi-dimensional Merkaba field. So even just going into that building without you running any frequency, without you without you doing a meditation, you're going to get massive healing just because of the structure of the building. It's like a sacred oasis of alchemy and magic that it's just going to heal people as soon as they step through the doors. So we want to build 13 of them and link them together through the grids in the ground. The first one that we're building is Ophiuchus. And Ophiuchus is the healer in the sky. Ophiuchus also links to the planet, links to the human nervous system, the body part. So this first healing center is going to be the nervous system that branches out to all the other healing centers. So, you know, for us, we want to get it up and running. When it opens, everything will be 20%. Like, so all workshops will give 20% to people with no money. Everything 20% will be free. And so eventually we'll start reversing the roles. So it goes maybe 70, 30, 60, 40, 50, 50. And eventually I want it to be pure energy exchange. As we kind of ascend and it goes up and consciousness expands, people can come there, maybe work the gardens, the meditations, maybe do work in the horse healing stables, whatever it is, like do a bit of cultivation on the land, a bit of cleaning, give up a little bit of time, and in exchange we'll just give you what you need. And so this is kind of what we're setting up. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I'm really excited about it. And for me, it's about unity, man. Like, you know, we're all over the world. We've got to come together. We've got to work together. We've got to share our knowledge, share our skills. There's still far too much separation in this spiritual community, far too much ego, people wanting to keep themselves separate from everybody else. We've got to come together. And if we don't, we're never really going to move forwards.
Yeah, 100%. Divide and conquer has been the name of the game for so long. And it's really about, you know, us coming together and realizing we have more in common with each other than we have that's different, right? And I love your vision, brother, and I put my energy into that vision manifesting as well, you know, because that's the world we're heading into. It's in my mind and consciousness is inevitable. You know, the scriptures speak about it, the cycles of time talk about it. We're in the shift in consciousness, and as we're going through that process, all the systems that don't serve us and that have taken away from our empowerment and sovereignty are crumbling. And as they crumble, it may be a little shocking to some people because we've relied on it for decades, if not centuries, You know, it's like, what are we without these systems that have controlled us? Okay. And what we truly are is we're sovereign beings that are able to govern ourselves. And it will be a process for us to get to that point, but we're building it now, you know? And so I'm just grateful that we have the opportunity to have these discussions at the beginning phases. This is just the beginning, you know, these interviews and everything that we're doing here. So I just want to say thank you, brother, for everything you're doing. And I see your vision and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. It's been an honor and a pleasure, brother. Just massive, massive love, massive respect.
Thank you, man. And why don't you share with everybody your website and what's coming up? Where can people connect with you? What should they, you know, if they want to learn more or even have a healing session, how can they go about doing that?
Yes, if you go to starmagichealing.org, there you can book private healing sessions. You can book group healing sessions online, group healing sessions in person. We do group healings from 55 people up to 333. We've got 3 levels of training, facilitator training level 1, 2, and 3. We've got an app that you can download. You get 7 days for free, and then it's £33 a month. And you get access to hundreds of meditations, healings, light language transmissions, light codes, yoga, breath work, mystery school teachings. We meet online every Monday, Wednesday, and second Sunday for activations. It's just a beautiful tribe where you can connect with people all over the world and just be in a space where you're with people on the same wavelength as you that, you know, want to just vibrate highly and do good work for the planet. So all of this stuff's there. And if you've got questions, just reach out. The team will be happy to speak to you. I'm happy to speak to you. You can get access to the YouTube, Instagram handles, everything on the website. So starmagichealing.org, go and check it out. And I look forward to chatting to some of you in the near future.
Beautiful. And so to everybody, starmagichealing.org, tune into Jerry's work. And also Jerry's going to be at the cruise that we're doing at the end of the year, which is December 14th to 21st. So you can check that out at galacticorigins.cruise.com. And if you're tuning into Jerry's work and you like what he's sharing here, go ahead when you on checkout, when you're registering, go ahead and put Jerry's name in there. Let us know that you came in from this. That'll be amazing. So hope to see some of you guys there. And thank you all for tuning in today. And thank you, Jerry, brother. I appreciate you. Looking forward to getting to know you more, and especially at the end of the year for the cruise.
Thank you, bro. Love you, man.
Love you too, brother. Take care. Bye.